Section 30, Initial Report. Within the period prescribed in his release document, the prisoner shall present himself to the probation and parole officer specified in the release document for supervision. If within 45 days from the date of release from the prison or jail, the parolee or pardonee concerned still fails to report, the probation and parole officer shall inform the board of such failure for appropriate action. So, for initial report, dito sa initial report, dito is sinasabi na yung prisoner ay dapat maipresent niya yung sarili niya sa probation and parole officer in the release document for supervision within the period na nakalagay sa release document niya and within 45 days from the date nung siya ay na-release sa jail or prison. At kapag ang parolee or ang pardonee is nag-fail sa pagre-report, yung probation and parole officer na ang bahalang mag-inform sa board sa nangyaring failure and para mabigyan ng board ng tamang aksyon. So, for Rule 3.4 of the rules is hereby amended as follows. Rule 3.4, Presentation to Probation and Parole Officer. Within the period prescribed in his release document, the parole shall present himself to the probation and parole officer specified in the release document for supervision. So, dito naman sa Rule 3.4, Presentation to Probation and Parole Officer, dito is kailangan yung parolee i-present niya yung sarili niya sa specified probation and parole officer in the release document for supervision. Pero kailangan ma-present niya ang kanyang sarili within the period na nakalagay sa release document niya. So, for example, is nakalagay sa release document niya is April 30, 2021. So, yung araw na yon is kailangan mong i-present yung sarili mo sa probation and parole officer. So, dito naman is if parolee fails to report within 15 days from the date of his release from confinement, the probation and parole officer shall inform the board of such failure of the board's appropriate action. So, dito, kapag naman yung parolee is nag-fail to report within 15 days from the date simula nung kanyang release of confinement, so yung probation and parole officer ay i-inform niya sa board ang nangyaring failure para yun nga, mabigyan ng tamang aksyon. So, Section 31. Arrival Report. The probation and parole officer concerned shall inform the board through the Technical Service Parole and Probation Administration the date the client reported for supervision not later than 15 working days therefrom. So, sa arrival report naman, sinasabi yung dito is yung probation and parole officer na ang bahalang mag-inform sa board sa pamamagitan ng technical service or parole and probation administration kung kailan yung date na nag-report yung client for supervision. And dapat hindi lalagpas ng 15 working days mula doon. So, for Rule 3.5 is hereby amended as follows. Rule 3.5, Arrival Report. When the parolee reports for the supervision, the probation and parole officer concerned shall immediately inform the board through the technical service of the parole administration of such fact by submitting the necessary arrival report. So, sa Rule 3.5, Arrival Report is yung kapag ang parolee ay nag-report for supervision, yung probation and parole officer na ang bahalang immediately na i-inform yung board gamit or through technical services of the parole administration. Ng mga katotohanan by submitting the arrival of report. So, for Section 32, mandatory conditions of supervision. It shall be mandatory for a client to comply with the terms and conditions appearing in the release documents. So, dito lang naman sa mandatory condition of supervision is sinasabi na ito yung sapilitan sa isang client na sumunod or mag-comply sa mga terms and condition na nakalagay sa release document. So, sa ayaw at sa gusto mo, kung ano yung nakalagay na susundin mo sa release document, dapat mong sundin. So, for Section 33, Review and Modification of Conditions, the Board may, upon the recommendation of the Probation and Parole Officer, revise or modify the terms and condition appearing in the release documents. So, dito is, review and modification of condition is upon the recommendation of the parole and probation officer. Ito ay maaaring i-revise or i-modify yung terms and condition na nakalagay sa release documents mo. Pero ang makakagawa lang nito is yung board. So, maaari nilang palitan or i-revise or hindi na ipagawa yung iba, ganun. So, iyon, i-revise lang nila or i-modify nila kung ano yung gagawin mo. So, for Section 34, Transfer of Residence, a client may not transfer from the place of residence designated in his release document without the prior written approval of the regional director, subject to the confirmation by the board. So, for Section 34, Transfer of Residence, dito ay kung ano or kung saan ka lang naka-designated na resident or kung ano yung nakalagay na residence niya sa release document, doon lang siya. So, hindi siya pwedeng lumipat or hindi pwedeng lumipat yung client sa ibang lugar or residence without the prior written approval ng regional director. And, so, eto naman, i-confirm siya ng board. So, hanggat walang approval na pwede kang lumipat ng residence, so hindi ka makakalipat. So, for Rule 3.8 is hereby amended as follows. Rule 3.8, Transfer of Residence. A parolee may not transfer from the place of residence designated in his release document without the prior written approval of either the regional director or the administrator, subject to the confirmation of the board. So, ito nga yun, hindi ka pwedeng lumipat ng residence hanggat walang approval ng regional director or the administrator. So, ito naman is i-confirm din siya ng board. So, yun. For the Section 35, outside travel, a chief probation and parole officer may authorize the client to travel outside his area of operational jurisdiction for a period not more than 30 days. A travel for more than 30 days shall be approved by the regional director. So, for Section 35, outside travel, so dito naman sa outside travel, ang chief probation and parole officer ang magbibigay ng pahintulot or i-authorize yung client na mag-travel outside of his area of operational jurisdiction. But, yung travel niya is not more than 30 days. Then, kapag more than 30 days naman ang travel, ang regional director naman ang mag-a-approve kung pwede or hindi. So, for Section 36, travel abroad and or work abroad. Any parolee or pardonee under active supervision or surveillance who has no pending criminal case in any court may apply overseas work or travel abroad. However, such application for travel abroad shall be approved by the administrator and confirmed by the board. So, for Section 36, travel abroad, pwedeng mag-travel or mag-apply overseas ang parolee or pardonee na under ng active supervision. But, ito ay pwede lamang sa mga walang pending case sa any court. Any court. So, kapag may pending case ka, hindi ka authorized na mag-abroad or hindi ka authorized na mag-work or mag-travel sa abroad. Then, ito ay aprobahan ng administrator and i-confirm siya ng board. So, for Section 37, death of client. If the client dies during supervision, the probation and parole officer shall immediately transmit a certified true copy of the client's death certificate to the board recommending the closing of the case. However, in the absence of the death certificate, an affidavit narrating the circumstances of the fact of death from the barangay chairman or any authorized officer or any immediate relative where the client resided shall suffice. So, for Section 37, death of client, kapag naman ang client ay namatay during the supervision, then ang probation and parole officer ay immediately transmit ang certified true copy ng death certificate ng client sa board. So, ipapass na yun sa board, itatransmit niya sa board yung certified death certificate ng client. Tapos, ito, yung parang i-recommend niya na i-close na yung kaso. Then kapag wala namang death certificate, dapat may affidavit na nagsasabi na yung taon na yun is totoong patay na. So, manggagaling yun sa barangay chairman or any authorized officer or immediate relative kung saan naka-reside ang client. Then, yun is okay na, sapat na.